All right, folks. Hi, I'm Brandon Jones. I work at Yazoo Brewing Company. I run the Embrace the Funk program here in Nashville. Thanks so much for coming out to the seminar here. This year, I guess kind of like last year, I decided to add a little something different than what's on the program. So definitely going to talk about wild brewing, but also this new kind of buzzword and initials that people are talking about in sour and wild beer brewing called THP, and that's not the Tennessee Highway Patrol. So one of the things that I hope to that you can get out of this is kind of some inspiration to elevate your wild and sour program. And I think one of the ways to do that is through ambient and wild microbes. They're prevalent, anywhere in the world. You can capture some sort of wild yeast or native microbe to make a beer with. So one of the things that I truly like, and friend Jeffrey Stubbins at Gesture King and I have always agreed on this little guy right here, that local microbes, native microbes, they definitely help give the beer a sense of place and time, and it's a unique place and time. We at Yazoo, we've started incorporating local Nashville microbes in most of our beers now. There's very few of them that actually don't have some sort of Nashville or a Middle Tennessee microbe in them. One of the things that you can definitely do is create a unique house character with native microbes, because they are unique to your area. Now they don't become proprietary once you put them out, but you can start developing that. And like any microbe, it'll grow, it'll adapt, it'll change different temperatures. Especially like at our barrel house, we get 40, 50 degree temp swings. So they will produce different characters. So you can still work on that house character. If you're, if you're using stuff from the lab and you're able to capture some wild microbes, then you can add those in. The complexity. This is one thing I like to say: microbes over malts. That's one thing that I believe in. Back in my homebrewing days, that's what I would always do to make my beers different. I was still using white yeast and white labs, but adding little bits of other microbes to them, and that's how I created complexity, and that's how I was able to, I think, make the beer stand out. So I think definitely doing that over adding different malts, that's a really cool and very fun way. Capturing year-round. You hear a lot about spontaneous fermentation only taking place during a season. That doesn't mean you can't go out and capture these wild yeast and these microbes year-round. There's no real bad season for it. Clearly there's better seasons, but absolutely year-round we've captured stuff January through December. See, labor of love. Yeah, it is definitely a labor of love. There is so many times like I've captured these microbes and they're not that great. So you have to work for it. But the good news is it is fairly easy. It's pretty cost effective. I don't want to mess up the picture here. So some of our first spontaneous beers and native microbe beers, at Yazoo, we actually used shallow pans, just like this, to capture it. So you don't really need some massive cool ship or crazy setup to actually go out and capture these microbes. You see here we had sawhorses, and that was a pan that I got that was supposed to be like a chip pan or something like that to help bread. It was definitely from a restaurant store, but yeah, that's some of ours from I think around 2013, 2014. You can, as long as you have the ability to make wort and make a small gravity wort, you can go out and you can capture these and step them up. Now that was about 4 gallons, I think, enough to fit in a small carboy, and see what we get. And somebody dared me to use this in there, so I did. Some people remember that from Funk Fest. So capturing, yeah, it can do. So all that said, let's talk about how to capture these microbes. Yeah, it can be as simple as a jar and some cheesecloth. So this is in my backyard. These are pretty decent. What we end up catching on this, I haven't actually used this in any of our beers yet, but kind of worked on a few small things at home. But yeah, to capture your local flora, it's actually pretty easy. 3 to 4 mason jars, the more you set out, the better chance you have of success. Cheesecloth, that keeps, the animals from getting in it, bugs, big things from dropping in there. Basically a 5 to 7 degree Plato wort. Now hops in here, I do say 5 to 7 grams of low alpha. We're talking maybe 3 to 4% alpha. Now that is optional on there. Now if you do want to try and capture local bacteria, you'd want to drop the hops down, or maybe not use any hops at all. But hops will impede the growth of lactic acid. So you're trying to catch a yeast, then you would definitely want to bump up the hop level in the mixture. Now, this is something there are folks that do wild yeast wrangling. I truly believe in using lactic acid or phosphoric to drop that pH. I think that's very important. If you're going to capture ambient yeast, you want to drop the pH down. Okay, that's going to help you to not catch anything that's a baddie. So something that is going to grow maybe a mushroom or something. You don't want to unless you're into mushroom farming. Fruit and vegetable, flower gardens, those types of areas, just like under the roses, because of the sugars, the yeast are going to, they're going to try to get near the sources. So those are the places that have a better chance of success. And again, you have 3 to 4 little mason jars out there, and in your cheesecloth to catch that, I think you are definitely going to stand a higher success rate. So you'll have your wort, just kind of like making a starter in home brewing. So these mason jars, some of them are pints, half pints. Make your wort. You're going to put it in warm, let it cool down overnight. So as it's cooling, cool draws in. So let it cool overnight. The biggest thing on this is that there. Do not taste the wort. Don't do it. There are things in there that need to die sometimes. I'm not saying that happens every time, but you will get microbes that probably need to die when the pH drops. And again, I'm going to keep pointing that out. So this is an experiment that I did, and I believe that's right. That was some peaches that I put in there. 3 to 7 days later, after you seal your jars up, you're going to notice some CO2 if you were lucky enough to capture it. Once the CO2 starts, you're going to wait. Some people say 2 weeks. I would be on the cautious side and wait 3 weeks. Fermentation, because you have such a low gravity wort, it should finish. Most of the time it's actually 10 days for me, but once you get past the 3-week mark, your pH should have dropped and your gravity should have dropped at that point. So the pH test, if you're able to do that, if you're going to get in this, I'd highly suggest doing a pH reading at the beginning and at the end of your wort. Now, if you're pre-acidifying, you're definitely going to do your pH readings. So the better chance of success is when you see the pH drop, so you know that something has happened inside of there. Now, if your pH increases, you definitely just abort, dump it. Don't smell it, don't taste it, just dump. And this is common sense, but I think it goes without saying, if the cultures smell like vomit or feces or even hot garbage, dump them. Do not taste. Again, I'm going to keep saying that. This is inherently wild, but it is rewarding once you get into it. Where's the? It's killing me. Where's the AV guy? This may be a little better. Okay, so yeah, can you guys still hear me? Okay, good. Man, that's way better. So yeah, if you do come up with any of these off flavors, try again. That's what I want. If you fail the first 3-4 times, keep trying, because this is something that I think that they can elevate your beers, and I do believe that this can make your beers unique. And again, they can give your beers a place of locality and time. So alternatively, if you don't want to go through setting jars outside, finding some neat place, which that's always the things that I enjoy when I see new fruits or flowers coming out, is making up some work and putting it out there. If you don't want to do that, then you can actually do what I did here, and this was a couple months ago when strawberry season was happening. And I just put some strawberries in some work. Sadly, it didn't end up working out. Really wanted it to. Really wanted strawberry yeast, but I'll try it again next year. But yeah, you can go with fruits. You can go with flowers, berries, any sort of herbs. You can actually try to cultivate the yeast off of those, just in this pretty simple way of jars. I know it sounds, with all the all the technology and all the equipment that breweries buy, that just going and doing something as simple as 10 ounces in a mason jar can absolutely change your program and give it a very cool, unique character to it. And again, going back to what we used to do before we got our big cool ship with the metal pans. I wish I had a picture of the metal pan. We actually did some spontaneous fermentation, but I just didn't take a whole lot of pictures back then. But even something small like that can absolutely revolutionize and change and make your program very unique. Once you get a culture, and the culture you're happy with, it smells good, sometimes you will get some mold. Mold is something we don't really worry about in this. It happens. You just scrape a little bit of it off and step your cultures up. So once you step those up and they get active, mold shouldn't be a concern after that. That's only after you're doing like the cheesecloth. So I assume everybody in this room knows how to step up a culture, so I'm not going to waste your time on that. Did not mean to go that slide yet. So at the end of this, or since I'm getting near the end of this, is there any questions right now? Because I do have something else to talk about too that I decided to fold into that.
How long do you leave it outside?
Overnight.
That's it?
Yep. Yeah, most of the time it's not even 20, it's 12 to 14 hours. And you should be, it's just the rapid cooling. It's going to cool really quickly. It's not like a large volume in a cool ship where you really need, 12 to 14 hours of, cooling down 40 barrels.
So you want to place it warm and let it cool down?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I mean, it's, the times that I've done it, it's gone in and maybe like, by the time I get it into the jar, maybe 205 degrees, just right off of boiling. And yeah, it cools down pretty rapidly. Draws it in. You're just basically sterilizing the wort, so you're not falsely capturing, something that was already, in the jar. That's gonna, you can sterilize the jar, but you're putting 200 something degrees in. It should be pretty decently killed off at that point. Any other questions on wild microbes?
What about bugs?
Like literally
insects, yeah.
Like literally insects?
Yeah.
That's the cheesecloth. I've never had any get inside of it.
No, but what if you want to capture the yeast?
Oh, like off of like a bee?
Maybe, something like that.
Yeah, we do have a yeast that's called bee yeast that we do buy. That's a little bit different, but yeah, Jeff Mello and I actually tried last year while we were out doing some exploration. We tried to capture some off of a bee. It wasn't really viable. It just didn't have a very good smell. But yeah, I've heard of people. There was a fellow I think that got some wasp yeast one time.
Yeah.
That works. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't.
I think
Please don't kill bees. I mean, we need all the bees we can get in this world now. Yeah, you can certainly try. I mean, they like to eat, and they typically go for fruits. So you're probably going to get what was on a fruit. You're probably not getting a yeast off of, I don't think any insects actually have their own native yeast. They're just getting from other sources. So it's probably just something that's maybe off a blackberry bush that's,
the Southeast Labs yeast that y'all use,
mm-hmm.
that came from honey, right?
That one came from a hive.
A hive, okay,
Mhm.
yeah. And you got both of them, right? He has two different ones. You got
He has two of them, yeah.
B1 and B2, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, those are the two that we actually started using a combination of those two. But yeah, those are both from Tennessee. Both of the bees that we use are Tennessee native.
I know he has one from a brewery out of Savannah, and they actually use yeast from Savannah in their beer, doesn't it?
Yep. Okay, so any other questions on, yes?
Before you step up, are you going through any process to isolate any different microbes that you?
No, that's a good point, and actually that was I think that might have been a slide that I accidentally deleted. But yes, when you step up, I think I was going to go after this. So your choices are, if you find something really cool, it's probably going to be in a mixed culture. We have never, I think we've done one isolation before off of it. Mostly I'm capturing, I just want to, again, I want to capture that moment in time, and that includes everything that's in there. And so yes, you certainly can. I have not gone past that except for once, and it's something we don't even use. It's at a lab at BSI actually, is where we have that. But yeah, you certainly can. You can send those off. You can send your cultures off to a lot of the labs. I mean, I think will even do it for you locally. But I just prefer to, if I find something that ferments, flocks decently, has a nice flavor. I think about our recipes and whether it would go nice in a saison, or if it would go well kind of in our Flanders, or or maybe like one of our just Brett Ford beers, one of our Belgian Brett beers. I think about that. So we just yeah, I mean, they really do come from, a lot of our microflora comes from mason jars in different places in Middle Tennessee. And I believe that's really given our beers kind of a better edge and a more unique flavor that makes it memorable for people. And it's neat knowing that, again, talking about the time where you captured that. And we do try to step that up. I do save some of them, and again, in mason jars to get a sponsorship. Any other questions? Dan?
What would you say your rate of success is if you take a guess?
Gosh, probably 60, 70%. I mean, better than, slightly better, like a Titan season. You can still keep rooting. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, again, going back to what I said on the first slide. I mean, it's a labor of love, it really is, going through it, but I do think it's rewarding, and I do believe that it's something that can change a program just based on what you've done, in a neat area, that, a place that you find unique, a place that means something to you. You can incorporate that into your beer pretty easily and at a decently minimal cost of something you can just go to the grocery store and pretty much buy everything off of.
Yeah, I apologize, I walked in just a few minutes
No.
late, but,
I like discussions better than I do pointing at slides anyway.
will you just repeat, you're intentionally using a low gravity beer?
Sure, because your cell count, the ambient microbes that are, they're floating around,
Right.
the cell count's gonna be low.
Gotcha, okay.
So, we're talking 5 Plato. I think that's usually, I put 5 to 7, but I think most of the time I'm usually closer to 5. And we use about 5 grams of hops in there, 5 to 7, when we do the native captures. But yeah, you intentionally want to go low and then step it up slowly. So after that, you would probably, if you found something you liked, you're gonna have a pretty low cell count, but you should be able to figure out at that point if it's, if it's something viable, if it's a character that you really like. You should be able to step it up, just, kind of like if you had an old vial of White Labs yeast or something, you could, just run that up on like 100 mil. And again, I would use probably 5 to 6 Plato, step it up from there.
Are you doing homebrew size batches of these first before you kind of jump into throwing it into your main cultures?
Yeah, I mean, I guess homebrew size is relative, but yeah, a lot of times it's like 1 gallon. Sometimes I've done, if we're So if we're running, when I do some of these tests, and I haven't done them in, gosh, maybe a year or so now, except for the two that were up there, and I did those at home. But I used to use our Hefe wort, just because it was, it's kind of a little bit starchy, and had some, it's pretty easy to work with. The IBUs weren't, high, they weren't super low, so you could kind of figure out, is this something that's going to work in an environment with some hops in it? Is it going to produce some acid with this? So, I mean, most of our sours actually have between, 10 to 20 IBUs in them anyway. Even the ones that get, get pretty darn sour, they do have decent amount of hops in them. But yeah, definitely. I mean, I wouldn't step something up, and I don't think Linus would be too happy if I threw it in 40 barrels of wort. So we definitely do our due diligence first.
Are you doing mixed fermentations with them? And so, I mean, how do you decide if you're going to do a mixed fermentation or if you're just going to do single pitch with something?
So my approach is when I do once I capture something and it could be 2 or 3 jars, and I'll go through the process of after kind of right in this area. So about 2 to 3 weeks in, you can probably have a pretty good idea. I mean, if it's smelling like feces at day 8, it's probably not going to get any better, and that's just a dumper. But for safety's sake, that's why I keep saying this number here. Yeah, so my process is go through, smell it after I'm kind of that safe point. Go through, smell it, do sensory, do a little taste with some, just pull some out with some pipettes, and taste it. And just start thinking about other styles. Does this lend itself to some sort of minty black pepper? Well, that might go really well with our saison. Is this really kind of stone fruity? Well, that could go well with again with saison. Does it have a lot of black cherry or licorice type of woody cinnamon note to it? Well, that would might go well in our dark sours. So kind of go from what you have, and then think about, okay, well, do I want to make a completely different beer with this, or is just a very nice complementary character to what we're already doing? And sometimes that might just be in, as Devin asked, are you doing a home brew or a commercial size? Yeah, a lot of times it is, maybe in 1 gallon or 6 gallons. Sometimes I've just done it in single barrels. We've gotten to a decent size point where, if I've got a barrel that we've just brewed and I kind of have this experiment that's just wrapped up, I might throw it in 1 barrel and see what happens. And with our cultures we already have, as long as it's a complementary character, that's what I'll do. And that becomes like sometimes like a single release for our private citizenship club.
Have you found that these captured cultures are more attenuative than a typical brewer's yeast, or do they sometimes need some help from a color strain to?
Yes and no. Some of them have actually outcompeted, I've noticed, that when I have added it. So we had a beer that we did called Brett Saison Remixed about 3 years ago, and that had native Nashville cultures in it. And I found that outcompeted our cultures that came from the lab eventually. After about 8 or 10 months in the barrel, yeah, I definitely got more of that Nashville character in there. And it's a complete, if you have that same year, that same vintage, we had the remixed and we had the regular Brett Saison. And I mean, they're night and day difference to me in there. And all I did was, I think really it was maybe like 300 mil in one 59-gallon barrel, and it just outcompeted it. Something in here.
Are you using these cultures for primary fermentation as well, or is this more secondary?
Most of the time it is secondary, because a lot of the beers already have an established flavor to them, and the way that we operate, we don't come right out of the heat exchanger, out of the brew kettle into barrels. So it's a little difficult for me to do some primary. I have been able to do that before if I've brought a barrel. Our sour facility is about 5 miles away from our main brewery, so it's a little bit difficult for me to do that. But I found that if I'm going to try to influence it, it's better just to go in the barrels, you know, day of, or they get it in the barrels sooner. And I've found the stark differences in the beers. Because they want to eat, they want to grow, they're living, so they do want to, you know, they want to do their thing.
When you say get in the barrel sooner, you mean primary fermentation, quick primary fermentation, go to barrel?
Yeah, most of the time with ours, so we operate, again, we're about 5 miles from each other, so we have to transport over in stainless totes. So I like to get the initial like 3 to 4 day primary high poison out of the way in the totes, and because I'm not a very good mop operator, so it's a little easier to just go ahead and get that done, and in the end you have more beer to sell, which, you know, just cool for the program. I saw another hand. I felt like it was over here. Maybe it was somebody stretching. Okay. So the other thing, so I did shorten the whole original thing I was going to talk about is wild fermentation. But the thing I did want to discuss, I'm going to bring this up, and it'll make sense on kind of the last slide, but is kind of the new buzzword, or, you know, initials, THP. THP is, it's kind of a running joke between some of the sour brewers, it's the new diacetyl. Everybody a couple of years ago was, oh man, this is diacetyl. They learned a word, and it was diacetyl. Now that word is THP, and I'd say a lot of folks haven't heard of THP. So THP is use my laser, is a mousy and kind of, I think Cheerios is probably the most commonly used descriptor on what THP is. It can also be a biscuit or kind of a popcorn character, but not really like a buttery diacetyl popcorn character. It's detectable, it takes your saliva to really bring it out, especially in low pH beers. So it's really detectable in aftertaste or during the swallow. So it's nothing that as soon as you hold it up that people usually get. It's something that happens as soon as it hits your palate. Now, what is it produced by? I'll let this up on everything in case anybody really wants to look at the breakdown. But it's produced, it's amino acid metabolization. It's produced by lysine, okay? So potential causes. Rye, oats, quinoa, that's just some examples of grains that have high lysine levels in them. Comparatively, wheat is lower. Now, some people do pick this character up, kind of that Cheerios baked goods character in Berliner Weiss. Now, we were having a discussion earlier that we think that that's mistakenly picking up THP because, especially in white wheat, you can get that doughy kind of bready flavor. That's not THP. THP is clear. If you had Cheerios and you taste that in a beer, I can guarantee you about 99% that's THP. So the grist can actually be one of the causes of it. Now, what happens in fermentation is the lysine is taken by the sac, and then it can be released. Now, that can be an instant release on transfer, and I think I've got that on the next page. But some of the causes people say are the Brettanomyces. Now, BSI Dre has been lately, I guess in some of the groups, folks have said, yeah, they've used that, and they feel like that's the cause of it. Andy Parker at Avery, I've spoken with him at length on this. I'd say of any brewery in the world that's used that strain, Avery has probably used that strain more than anybody. And he doesn't believe that. Avery makes a decent amount of beer each year. So we believe that that happens upon transfer. Now, a lot of brewers do their beers in barrels, so we believe that happens upon transfer. Now, that's not saying it can't happen in stainless. It's a transfer thing. So, oak versus stainless, that's not really the cause of it. THP can still develop, and it's almost an instantaneous character that develops. I mean, we've had it develop. I've had a beer and I'm like, oh, this is great. You know, I do all these blends, get in the tank, and I'm excited about pouring a big glass of it. And, you know, upon cleanup, and an hour later, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is completely different. This is nothing like that. So it can happen that quickly. Forced carb versus natural carb. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the differences in these two when it comes to THP. We force carb at Yazoo. We just found that just works best in our process for packaging. So natural carb, I know that breweries that have had this problem that keeps coming up, they keep developing this Cheerios type flavor, they switch over to a natural carb. Now, again, it goes back to what we think is a Brettanomyces issue, reacting with the oxygen, and the sac is releasing the amino acids, okay? So the natural carb will reuptake that quicker because the Brettanomyces to metabolize the sugars, if it does pop up. The Brettanomyces is a slower fermenter. So it takes a little longer for that to happen. If you're adding fresh sac, if it's champagne yeast or 001 or whatever you're adding to prime your bottles, that is going to happen a lot quicker. If it does develop, there's no like good aging time. It's just when it's something that does age out. But if you're sitting on 3 pallets of bottles that you plan on shipping out for summer, it might turn into a winter beer at that point. So that's kind of the right now we haven't been able to really nail down anything. I did a survey on the Milk the Fun page and asked a number of brewers, and they responded back, and just based on times that it's happened to us, it can 1 to 8 months. I mean, that's a pretty big variance there. Some people have still reported that after a year they can still pick it up. But the good news is it does age out for most people eventually. So I'm going to show you some steps that we've taken to kind of reduce and eliminate it. We had it pop up in a few different bottles. This is probably easier for me to point. So if you're familiar with the racking cane setup on most barrels, you have your CO2. Your CO2 coming in here into the barrel to create the counter pressure to push it out and then into your tank. Okay. So what we've done is we've created a Y right here, where the main CO2 line comes in, so we're still pushing CO2 in the barrel, but also we have a T in line now. All right. So on each barrel, when we pull the barrel out, shut the valve off, main valve, and then flip on CO2 here. Now that blows anything out, so once I'm picking up the racking cane, I'm going to the next barrel, I've got CO2 constantly running from here all the way out. So when I'm going through the atmosphere and I'm going right down to my next barrel, as soon as you get inside the bung and you reach the top part of the beer that's inside there, shutting this CO2 off, that CO2 comes back on and the valve opens back up. So that's that, it's kind of like that little, it's just that little step that you take. Have I forgot to turn this off and put that down in there and blew true out everywhere? Absolutely. You know it real quick and you do it. But it's just something that you have to get used to. It's a different part of the process. We have added a small amount of sugar into the blending tank. Typically I'll add a little bit of fresh yeast, and that's in the form of champagne yeast a lot of times. We have added fresh Brett, one of our beers that we do fruit on. We actually add fresh Brett to it, but that's going to undergo another like 40 to 60 days of fermentation and conditioning on the fruit. So I'm not too concerned about THP at that time. These are beers that are finished and need to be packaged within the next 3 to 4 weeks. Occasionally, quick nitro purge. We've got a little small nitro tank, or CO2. Either one will work, but just once you get in the blending tank, bump it up a few times, just kind of blow that out. And also that helps if you are using a little bit of sugar in there, just to reuptake and do a quick fermentation inside the blending tank. That just kind of helps boost it back up while you're doing your CIP. So why do I bring this up? Because we want your data. Now that we've talked about THP, if you're getting this in your beer, there's a group of brewers. It's myself, Jay Goodwin at the Rare Barrel, Andy Parker at Avery, Lauren Salazar, New Belgium, Chad Davidson at Cricket State. We're working on a kind of a paper to present to kind of help uncover the mysteries of THP. It is, in my opinion, it is a flaw. It's a flaw that's popping up in sour beers, and I saw it popping up in ours before I even really knew what THP was. But once I realized what it was and I tasted it, I knew that was something I didn't want. So that is, again, kind of the new buzzword. But if you know what it is and your beers are coming out with this character, I would love for you to be able to eliminate it, because I like drinking people's beer too. And we'd love to have your info. Basically, if you've experienced it, how your transfer took place, how long it was in the tank, did it recover? If you have a sample, I know we were able to send a few off for a little bit of practical testing. We can get into that on email, but my contact info is right here. So that is what I've got for my talk. If there's any questions, I like this. I like talking better.
I know for a while people were saying to sub out wheat with spelt. Does that actually happen?
I missed it. What?
Sub out wheat in your base beer, your base with spelt.
Mm-hmm.
Is that just more of that kind of you're mistaking that crackery kind of note from the wheat, and you're just?
I don't know if I can speak for certain on that.
Yeah.
And just give you my gut reaction is that that's probably overblown and probably not. Again, I don't think that has much merit to it. I think that's making a change that really doesn't affect anything. Kind of like we had actually eliminated. We stopped using Dre in most of our beers, especially our lighter ones. Our saison used to have a decent amount in it. We stopped using it, but also started doing other things. So was that really the cause of it? I don't know. I'm very happy with where our beers are, not using it, so I see no reason to go back. But yeah, to your point, I don't believe, I haven't looked at the lysine levels in spelt, so I'm really not sure. I mean, it's an ancient grain, so I mean, I'm sure it's, more than wheat for sure.
Yep.
You're talking about your temperature swings in your barrel house.
Mhm.
What are you swinging 40 to 50 degrees? Like, what is your temperature kind of throughout the year?
So we have what we call bottom level or bottom temp control. We don't have any top ends, meaning we don't cool the warehouse any. It doesn't really get below like 58 to 60 during the cold months. But top end, I mean, it can get 95, 100 easily, especially once you start getting up maybe 5 racks high. It's amazing the difference in 10, 15 feet make in there when that air is just not moving at the top. That's one reason why we actually don't go more than 4 racks high now. We're getting too much angel share loss. So in the facility where our barrel cellar is now, I was going 5, 6 racks high sometimes, just to save space, and plus it's kind of cool to go up that high. And then I started looking at the levels when we were going to fruit some of those beers, and I knew just based on the markings on the heads, where these barrels were on the pile, and all the ones up top. I mean, it was just like, it was noticeably. If you look inside and holy cow, and it's like 2 gallons difference. And if you've got 4 gallon, 4 barrels up there, you're talking that's you're missing out on almost a half barrel's worth of beer sales right there, just because you stacked them that high. So See, I brought our levels where we stack down, and we no longer go more than 4 high, even though we could.
Yeah.
It's just, I like making beer, and I like to make more beer as much as possible. So that was kind of the reasoning behind that. It was never an issue with the beers tasting off. It's just simply a business thing. Yep.
I think one of the biggest unknowns with THP is how it's broken down. And I think it's a metabolic breakdown. And one of the indicators of that might be if you do cold storage versus warm storage and how fast it ages out. What's been your experience as far as that goes?
On the temp, like when it has developed on ours?
Yeah, if you age a beer cold versus like.
So we haven't done anything where we've aged it cold, because the second that I had detected it, and I think over the course of our program, I think it's only happened to us 3 times. And every time, it never went into cold storage. It was detected in the blending tank, so it sat in the blending tank a little longer, and it cleared up, and I think one of them cleared up in like 45 days. One of them, it was just not clearing up, so we decided to just let it sit. And then the other one was the remix, and we'd already packaged it and everything at that point. I just didn't know what THP was until I started, so I started seeing reports of it, and people started talking about it, and it's like, holy cow, that is that character. So.
So you never done a side-by-side experiment on?
No, I mean, to me, it's kind of like if it develops to asphalt, you put it out warm. I guess I could hold back a couple of bottles, but I mean, in my mind, as a business owner, you're trying to sell as much as possible, at a certain amount of time, and you see that as kind of lost profits for thankfully we haven't had anything pop up, and it might pop up next week when I go to blend, now that I've said that, but thankfully it's been over a year since I've had any detectable issue on that. And again, it really wasn't ever like some massive issue, but going back to one of the slides where somebody reported that it's 10 to 12 months for that to age out. I mean, that's a long time, especially if you're a fledgling program and you've counted on this. That's a hit. That's a hard hit. It's on the chin.
So to ask, potentially, do you think there's some enzyme activity that can help drop that out and speed that process up?
Like adding some enzymes?
Yeah, like you notice that? Do you think might be a way to actually drop that out?
I know Lauren has said that they have, I think it was Lauren or Andy had said that they had experimented with something, but I don't recall offhand. I can look it up. It was in an email maybe 6 months ago, but from what I remember, it was sort of like the cost of like the enzyme really wasn't, it was just, could have just left it sitting out and saved yourself a few $100 type of thing. That's probably not verbatim, but that's kind of the gist of what they had found. If it's shown that it will reuptake, I don't see any reason unless you're, and a lot of times if you're force carving, you're not going to have it until it's in the bottles anyway. You don't have really the luxury of it, truly happening. It goes in the blending tank, and you recirculate your sugar, and then you're bottling within a few hours. And if you've already got that set up, a lot of times it's not even tasty because you already have the sugar in there, so into the tank. So it's not like something you're like me when we force carve. I've got the luxury of put it in there, checking the blend, letting it all kind of mellow in there, and then adding my CO2 through the carb stem. Whereas you're doing force carb, you're adding your sugar, so you completely change the beer until that sugar re-ferments out. So I don't think many people are doing what I do and drink off the tank.
Have you noticed that if it develops more in a particular type of barrel, like a red wine, white wine, bourbon barrels, anything like that?
No, and to the point of one slides, it can develop at any time. It could be you could be in stainless, you can be in horizontal tanks, you can be in cube totes, you can be in fooders. It's simply from everything that the research that I've seen and the experiences. It is a oxygen thing upon transfer, and taking steps to minimize that. You know, the barrel thing is the biggest thing, I think, is adding in the T and the CO2 to be able to cut on, so when you're moving from here to here, you're not picking up oxygen in this, 2 foot, 3 foot area. And it's surprising how much, just that little amount of space and that amount of time you have your racking K now. What a difference that can make, in a 1,000 gallon blend, for sure. Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you guys so much for joining me in here. I appreciate it. Talk about 2 things. So, cheers. Any other questions? Just email me.